What's up, YouTube? Ryan, aka the Lucky Schmuck, back here once again with a special video for you today. As you can see, there are two heavily planted tanks behind me. Over this shoulder is a 29-gallon planted tank that is filled with life, guys. It has a full carpet, there's driftwood, there's about, I don't know, at least 10 different species of plants, shrimp, plecos, ottos, snails of all different species. We're gonna dive into it in just a moment here. And then tank over my other shoulder is a 20-gallon long that's got, again, a ton of plants, some shrimp, some snails, etc. Like I said, we're gonna dive into both these tanks, but before we do so, let me explain to you whose they are, because they're not mine. Okay, so you're wondering, what's the deal with these two tanks? I know we're gonna dig into them, but how did they end up over here in your garage? Now, if you remember correctly, I used to have my own tanks lined up along the countertop behind me, and they're now across the other side behind the camera, actually in a rack system which we just built. So if you haven't checked out that video, check it out and stay tuned to subscribe for future videos where I'm going to be adding a automatic drip system. We're going to have a linear air piston pump, run a air system loop, and a bunch of other things. I'm going to be doing it super cheap and super easy. So back to these tanks. I'm babysitting these tanks for a friend of mine, Chris. Now, Chris is a guy I actually bought some shrimp off of. I first met Chris on Craigslist and responded to an ad. I ended up buying some cherry shrimp from him, and I ended up buying some Malaysian trumpet snails from him, and I ended up buying a crypt from him. My original cherry shrimp in that planted tank came from Chris. So I went out there, met him. He showed me his tanks, these tanks, maybe 6 months ago when I first met him. Then a few months ago, again, I actually ran into him. This time, where? On YouTube. If you remember correctly, I believe it was Aquarium Co-op's 100,000 subscriber video. He talked about setting up aquarium clubs. Well, on that video, I had saw someone posted, "There's no aquarium clubs in Central Florida near me. I wish there was one." And I responded to that post. Well, guess what? When I responded to that post, I clicked on that guy's YouTube channel, and he only had a few videos, but guess what I recognized? These tanks. It was Chris. I was at his house a few months before then, so I messaged him on YouTube, and we exchanged numbers. Well, we already had his number, but we started communicating again. Okay, so that still doesn't explain why I have these two tanks behind me and Chris doesn't have them. What happened? So, Chris and I have been back and forth. Actually, he's been offered to help me build the fish room, and he's just a busy guy. He's actually in the middle of moving right now. I had reached out to him the other weekend and sent him some pictures of what I was doing with the fish room, and he said, "Hey man, would you like some, cheap shrimp or plecos?" Because I know he had just bought a super red and some some blue-eyed lemon drop plecos. And I was like, "Man, what happened? Why are you getting out of the hobby?" And he goes, "I have to move, and I can't have my two tanks. I got to stay temporarily somewhere in the whole moving process. So I'm trying to, just get rid of my tanks in the cheap, or find someone who can buy them," or he was going to sell the stuff back to the fish store. And I said, "Dude, you're crazy, man. Just keep them at my house, with nothing to me. It's just a space in my garage that literally was empty now." So it was literally perfect timing. He dropped them off here. They've been here for about a week or so. He's almost ready to come pick them up. I've actually really enjoyed taking care of them, and I want to show them off to you before I'm done babysitting. So I appreciate you listening to that whole story about how it came to be, because I really think it's cool to not only be passionate about this hobby and watch YouTube videos and learn cool things, but if you can, meet people in your area. Now, of course, be safe, make sure you meet in public places, what have you. I got to know Chris a little bit before, I agreed to babysit his tanks, what have you. But it's really cool if you can meet people at your aquarium club, or in this case, we don't have a club, but we kind of form our own little bond locally. I'll shut up now. Let's get to the tanks. So this is Chris's 29-gallon planted tank. And when I say planted tank, it is a planted tank. Now, he intends to actually redo this scape after he takes it back and move into his new place. So maybe we'll get an update from him. Maybe I'll have him send me a video once that happens, and we can showcase this tank once he redoes it. I think it's pretty cool as is. There's a ton of shrimp in here, and there's also 4 or 5 plecos. They're all either albino, longfin, super red, or blue-eyed albino, so they're all kind of a little special. They're all bristlenose, but there's no just regular ones. There's a ton of cherry shrimp in here. There's also some orange shrimp. Now, Chris had a few more tanks, so he actually broke up, or he broke down more than, there's an orange shrimp right there. There's an Otto Sinkless. It's a pretty decent looking Otto. He has a few Ottos in here, really good size. There's this big piece of driftwood he has coming up the middle of the tank with shrimp all over it. The plants, as we can see, he said this was some Italian val. He has Malaysian trumpet snails. There is these are the ones that I got. There is a rabbit snail. There's a few rabbit snails in here. There's a pretty decent one, decent sized one. As you can see, it's really cool. The plants are really carpeting, taking over the whole bottom here. You can see these big swords. There's actually a pleco on the back of this sword. You can see his or her reflection here. There's actually one albino pleco that's pretty gravid. They're pretty young plecos, but scared some Ottos off. Let's see if we can't get a look at this. Here's a look at the pleco. There's another albino one from the back here. Just a lot going on in this tank. The lily, as you can see here, I'm going to put a picture maybe of the lily. I got a really neat picture of the lily blooming the other morning against this backdrop of the window, and it hadn't bloomed for Chris, so he asked me to take a picture of that. Oh, pleco looks like he's almost vertical. There's another pleco over there. We got some, I believe there's a nerite snail as well on the wood. As far as some of the other plants, we get some aquarium dwarf lilies. There's some Java fern. Like I said, he kind of added some other plants, some pearlweed. On the top here, it's really neat. You can see he usually keeps this tank actually on his patio. We live in Florida. He keeps this tank literally usually all year round on his back patio and just adds a heater in the winter time. So it's a pretty cool, pretty resilient tank, really full of life. You can see the lily is about to shoot another flower up to the top. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he has planned for this, because it's just so much life and you could do so many things with it. The other tank that I'm babysitting for him is this 20-gallon long. And as you see here, it is just jam-packed with plants as well. In the last tank, I believe he had a mixture of some substrates, including some dirt. In this tank, he has a mixture of something, and I believe this is the red fluorite. There's a bunch of shrimp in this tank. You can see there's a shrimp here. Some of them are the black shrimp. You'll notice also some snails throughout. This tank actually has a pretty healthy population of assassin snails. So those are the snails that will attack and kill other snails. It's some pretty cool Anubias back there. I'm gonna go ahead and take the lid off, because if we get the aerial view from this tank is pretty sweet. Bear with me 1 second. All right, I'm risking my iPhone to bring you guys the top of this tank. I just think it's really cool look from the top. We got some floaters, but even these stem plants and stuff, and the look of that red and black fluorite is just, to me, is amazing. We got the glare of the light back here, but in the back of this tank, there's like a log with moss and some and a little lily back there. So it's really kind of a bunch of stuff. There's some more Anubias tucked away back there and some crypts on the bottom here. If we make our way back down to the front, we could see some assassin snails that are out right now. Let's see if we can't find some shrimp. I should have fed this tank. Oh, there's a shrimp right there in the back. See if we can, there he is scurrying around. Like I said, there's some dark blue and black shrimp in here. But this is another heavily planted tank. There's another shrimp right there. Another heavily planted tank, but not as of a jungle as the other one. They're both kind of unique and cool in their own right. So Chris said that in return for the favor of me watching them, we can do a little shopping and pick out some plants for the new rack system. So I'm eyeing some of this pearlweed. What would you guys, take? We got some val here. Obviously, we're just taking a tiny little bit. He's got some floaters. I mean, I'm gonna try to pick some stuff that he has a ton of, like maybe some of this, I think he said it was Italian val, just to get a carpet going. Some of this pearlweed or stuff that I know grows pretty quickly. Although he did say that I could have some of this Java fern windeloff. There's a few patches of it growing in here, so I'm probably gonna find a nice little chunk of that, because That's just really cool. I have regular Java fern, but not the window off. I forget they called this red plant, but I don't know if it's gonna work in my low light setups. We might grab a few cherries too. He said I can have some shrimp and some cherries and oranges in here. Some decent looking cherries. They're actually everywhere. There's a wide range of grades in here. There's a pleco underneath this wood. Can't tell which one it is. And then in this tank, there's some more stem plants, some crypts, bunch of crypts actually, some anubias back there. Actually, some of the crypts I originally got were from Chris. Some of the crypts I have in my current tanks are from Chris. So we'll do a little shopping and see what we come up with. Here's what I grabbed so far. I found a really cool little chunk of Java fern windeloff. So that's gonna find the new home, I think, on some Mopani wood in my 10-gallon tank. I got some of this, I guess it's that valve, some of the smaller pieces to start a carpet maybe in one of my 20 longs. And then as I mentioned, some of this pearl weed. I just like the look of it, just something different. I think that's pretty much it. Maybe I'll take some more of that valve to start giving me a head start since he has it and it's so thick in his tanks. But you know, his floaters and stuff, I already have some frog bait and water lettuce. You know, his melon swords are awesome, but that's obviously the focal point of the tank, not touching those. He said we could have some assassin snails, so I don't know. We'll see about that. And then some in here, I might take, I know there's a lot of chunk. I don't want to take too much. Maybe a tiny, like half a bunch of some of this stem plant here. I forget what he had called it, but big shout out to Chris. I mean, obviously, it really doesn't you know, cost me much to take care of his tanks. They're little, you know, shrimp and bristlenose plecos, so the food bill is not much, and he gave me food. He was literally going to give me everything. I mean, super nice guy, and he was going to start from scratch in the hobby. He was offering to give me like this whole 5-gallon bucket of stuff and these filters, and I said, man, you have other tanks that you can, you know, just keep them, and then that way when you come back you can start fresh. Oh, here's Super Red. Super Red is in there. I think it's so cool to see him. He's not huge, but he's growing. To see him down here among the green live plants is so awesome. Oh, there he goes. But yeah, this is like the jungle down here. Super cool. Got a pleco on either side of this piece of wood here. The albino and the Super Red. Whoop. All right, guys, just like that pleco, it's time for me to make my exit. As always, I appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for sticking to the end. I thought that story was pretty cool, how we had met on Craigslist. I bought some stuff from him, and then we kind of circled back and met again via YouTube. One of my favorite parts of this hobby is meeting other hobbyists and communicating, trading. So it was awesome, and it was my pleasure to babysit his tanks. Luckily, he has just these small planted tanks and not a big giant cichlid tank like some Frontosa. Catch you guys next time.